All right, so Three Ninjas Podcast, Domino, Hess, Jones, Bobby. And right now we have on the phone, we have writer, actress, comedian, and the first Disney character to appear on our goddamn show. We have Dani Fernandez on the phone.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm looking at my Disney character right now. I have like a picture of her in my living room. So anytime I get down, I'm like, I am a damn Disney character.
Goddamn Disney character. Now, my first thing is, how did that call go? Like, how did you get this role? And well, just to let everyone know, she was in Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
All right. Now, how did you get that call, or what happened? How did you get that role?
Yeah, well, some of the Disney people follow me on Twitter, which is both awesome and also frightening,
Right?
Because I'm in comedy and I'm never not myself. But if you think of it, because like some people will be like, "How are you a Disney character?" I literally, I post about my sex life in a funny way, but I'm a millennial. I joke about everything around me. But also, like, Sarah Silverman's Vanellope. So,
right.
and John C. Reilly has, I don't know what you're allowed to say on here, but I'm like, John C. Reilly has literally
say everything.
Anything and everything is allowed on the show.
It is all allowed.
Okay. Well, no, I was going to say John C. Reilly is literally like teabagged Will Ferrell. So let's
that's true.
He's Ralph. So I think it's chill. I think hopefully people can disconnect like the adult comedies from like family comedies. And, but yeah, so I have a lot of Disney people that follow me, and, some of them reached out and, were like, "Hey, do you want to be," because I host at a lot of different places. Mm-hmm. So I host at Nerdist, I've hosted for I've hosted for Geek and Sundry. I've been on Screen Junkies Collider, like a lot of those nerdy news channels, SourceFed. And in Ralph Breaks the Internet, they wanted real life people from the internet. So they got real life gamers, real life hosts to play themselves. So they hit me up and were like, "Hey, do you want to play?" Rich Moore, who directed Ralph, was like, "Hey, do you want to play yourself?" Or he was like, "Hey, do you want to play a host in a movie about video games and the internet?" And I knew it was Ralph. And then they were like, "Is it okay?" They kept messaging me like, "Hey, is it okay if it's like based on you, that she like kind of looks like you?" And then by the final iteration, they were like, "Is it okay if she's literally you?" So, and I came in, which was great, to the Disney Animation Studios that are in Burbank. I came in and their walls at the time were still decked out with Moana. That was really cool. Like all the original artwork. Came in and I read my script for my host character, who she plays a host at BuzzTube, which was like Taraji P. Henson's like was the head algorithm there. Yeah. And it was like making fun of BuzzFeed essentially, which is like the only place I haven't hosted at. I was like, so I'm taking shots at BuzzFeed. Hopefully they don't make a listicle about me.
Right.
And like most problematic or whatever tweets or whatever, just me talking about eating ass or something. I don't know. And she shouldn't be a Disney character. I was just like, I was honestly nervous about that. And then I came in and I did my script, and then they were like, "How would you say this? How do you do it?" And I'd be like, "Oh, well, hey, welcome to Nerdist. I'm Dani Fernandez." And they were like, "Oh, do that." So I did that, and that's how I got to say like my name and be like, "Hey, welcome to, Up to the Meeman," or whatever is the thing. I'm Dani Fernandez. And they just kept that take. I did a bunch of different takes, and I didn't tell anyone about it because I was afraid it was going to get cut out. And I'm in this Disney movie, and then like I was in a scene or something. So I just kept it quiet until it was like official when they like, at New York Comic Con, I hosted the Ralph panel, and they like showed my scene at the panel. So then I was like told everyone about it. But yeah.
Okay. Now at that point, did you feel like that you made it? Like you were at the height of your career at that point?
Not when I recorded it, because nobody knew. And like, again, because I was like, oh, this could get cut.
But when you actually saw it on screen, it was like, oh, the world is seeing this now.
I guess at New York Comic Con, I tried to take in the moments as I could. It was a lot of pressure. There were like 1,000 people in the room. There were Disney, executives and head of marketing, whatever, that were in there. I was up there with the filmmakers, Rich Phil and Josie Trinidad, who was a storyboard artist. And so it's hard to actually enjoy those moments because you just want to do well. So it's like, I'm moderating it. You're joking on the fly. You're making everyone feel comfortable. You're asking them the questions. You're remembering the next thing that's coming up. Like, cause we were showing them a lot of never before seen footage. It's like, so it's hard to take in to actually be like, enjoy that moment. I'm in therapy and I try to clock, I try to teach myself how to clock moments. So I'm not just racing through life and actually being in the moment. So I would say afterwards, I did such a good job on the panel that they asked me to do press. So that was a moment where I felt like Johnny Carson, when you're like a comedian, you do so well, he asked you to be on the couch because I wasn't slated to do press at all. I was done. But they were, I think because it was so funny and great, they were like, hey, do you want to stick around and do a bunch of press? So I was being interviewed by a bunch of different outlets. I had a lot of people coming up to me and asking for my autograph. And that was the moment that I was like, this was one of the most fun days of my life. But when you're in it, you're trying to just not mess up, essentially. So it's really hard to clock those moments and really enjoy them.
Okay. Now, what's your definition of success to you?
I would say doing something that you love and enjoying something that you love. And honestly, to me, this is so cliche, but I know so few people that are actually happy. So I feel like being happy is a flex.
Right.
You can not be doing, I know people that are millionaires that are miserable and they just read all the comments people write about them and they just hate their lives and they're so competitive. And I think if you're just happy, you could easily flex on that person and not even have that much money. So to me, that's being successful. I think doing what you love. I was talking to my little brother and he's still trying to figure out what he wants to do. And he was like, well, I think I might go into this computer thing and do computer science, which I think is a great career. But he was like, I want to do it just because I need a 401k and I need to have retirement. I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
You want to waste your whole life you want to waste your entire youth doing something you don't actually want to do just so you have retirement so that you can have money when you're older? I was like, what do you actually want to do? And he's like, well, I want to be a chef. But I'm like, then do that. That's absurd that we ingrain it into people's heads that they have to do something that they don't love just so that they can retire with money. And I'm like, but also what if you marry someone that has that steady, you don't know the future. You don't know, maybe you'll open up a restaurant and you'll have retirement money. You have to do something that you're passionate about. It just made me sad to hear that I think a lot of people feel that way.
You know what that reminded me of, that Kanye skit? You know what I have to keep me warm? My degrees.
That's true. But I mean, and I'm not just whenever people ask me about going into entertainment, I'm like, do not quit your day job.
Right.
That's the quickest way I think to get knocked out. Your day job allows you to live so that allows you to pay your rent so that on the weekends you can pursue your creative life, or on the nighttime. And then eventually, hopefully you rack up enough credits or a resume or whatever that you can move full time. But my friend Sarah Benacosta wrote a book called Real Artists Have Day Jobs. And I really recommend it for anyone that is trying to do both, because I think it's really scary when people are like, just quit your job, follow your dreams. I'm like,
we was just talking about that.
Yeah, we were.
Follow your dreams, but do it smart, So, yeah.
Now, let's get into your business. Now, Dani, where are you from?
My family's from San Diego and Texas. So I'm from both. I'm from Southern California and Texas. I grew up, I was in Southern California until I was about 12. It's where my parents were born and raised in San Diego. And then my dad moved us to Texas when I was 12 or 13. And I was there until after college. So it's really interesting because it's these really formidable years of mine. It's hard to pick which one I'm more connected to. I would say my heart, the softness of me, I think comes from Texas, because I think there's a lot of areas of, I would be a different girl. I think maybe because I lived in Orange County for a while, and that is really unfriendly in my opinion.
Right.
So, also really funny because both areas are like rich, white, conservative, just people that own boats essentially. And so they're not that different. Like San Diego actually isn't that different than Texas. And my family's Mexican, so both have a lot of that community there. But also like a lot of clashing of cultures in both those areas. So yeah, it's hard to pick which one I would say I'm more like.
Now, when did you decide that you wanted to get in the entertainment industry? Because I read somewhere that you were in medicine before and you just switched over to entertainment. Like, where does that switch come about?
Well, when I was in, when I was in high school, I was a creative, like in creative writing. I think I got published actually in like one of those teen magazines. I used to write poems and was like so angsty. Like if you went to my MySpace, I'm sure it had like My Chemical Romance or something on it.
Jesus Christ.
And, well, I mean, also anime nerds, because I'm a huge anime nerd, but weebs are very angsty. They're very much like, you know what I mean? It's like the super dramatic, like Attack on Titan, like that's how I was, I think. I had a mixture of that in high school. I used to also write fan fiction. So I was like on fanfiction.net constantly. So yeah, I was like, had that angsty weeb-ish era. And, I ended up going into broadcast journalism. So I did want to do entertainment in some regard. But at UT, where I went to school at the University of Texas, they only take like a certain amount of people in broadcast journalism because they actually place you at a station. So you have to like be in Lubbock, Texas or something, like, you know, butt fuck nowhere doing the weather or doing like the work, you know? And also Texas politics suck ass. I'm going to be honest. It sucks ass. And so some of the reports we had to do, I'm like, I do not want to talk to my senator about this. And so I needed a way to make money in college, and I went into personal training. We had a really nice, one thing about being in Texas, well, anywhere, any college, is that all the money goes to sports, to be honest. All the money goes to sports. It was really funny because we'd have like our football players, like the Longhorns would be in my class, and they're just in like Nike track, like, you know, like different suits per day. I remember one of the players was like, yeah, you know, the school pays for my books. And I was like, no, I pay for your books. We here in this classroom pay for your books.
You better go for 100 yards.
Open horns. But yeah, so I was I went into personal training. It was a lot of fun. A bunch of my friends were doing it. Plus you got to like work out with the athletes. And then I just moved that to my career. So I ended up working in a hospital because I worked in physical therapy. But it was rough. It was, working in a hospital, people die, like straight up people would die like every day. And I'm like, this is not like working out at your, school gym.
Right.
And it just it wasn't meant for me because there were people that really loved doing it. They would wake up and they were so excited to go work at the hospital, and I just hated being there. I think
Tom's going to kick the bucket today.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there is a level of respect, obviously, when you work in that field. And, you know, I remember I got pulled over once and I was in my scrubs and they like let me off. And I'm like, I'm only a physical therapist, but sure.
Little do you know.
You know, like I think I had all my textbooks and stuff in my other seat. And it was like, I was so exhausted, I think, too. They were like, I don't even think I had paid attention. I got pulled, but I was in my scrubs and I was like, oh, great. So, there's like, oh, she's a nurse or she's a, you know, doctor or whatever. She's going to surgery right now.
Right.
Like, no, I'm just helping someone that is trying to walk or whatever. But yeah, so I ended up kind of spiraling after that. I had gotten married once I got graduated, And
Ooh,
I dated the guy for 5 years, and that's what you do in Texas. It's like you graduate, you get married, you
get your shotguns and have a wedding.
Yeah, there you go. You go to Whataburger, or hopefully like try and get them to sponsor it in some way. And yeah, so I had gotten married really young, and my life was just spiraling out of control. I didn't love my job. I liked my husband, but we didn't. We weren't going.
Wow.
He was all right.
We weren't. No, I mean,
He was all right.
This is okay. I loved him as a person. I still think he's a really good person, but we weren't going in the same direction. We didn't want the same things, and I really wanted to be a writer. I knew that wasn't like it didn't feel like a viable option in that situation that I was in. And kind of like how my little brother was, you're just so trained to be like, no, you need to do the thing that's going to make money, the stable thing. You can't do the creative thing. So I started to write, and I had a really dark sense of humor. It was also the time when like Twitter was really coming up. So I was just writing the darkest, funniest shit on there. And the comedians that followed me, some of them to this day are still my mentors. One would be Roy Wood Jr., who's on The Daily Show. One of my biggest mentors. And he was like, "You're really funny." Neil Brennan was another one. People that were just like,
show, right?
He co-created Chappelle Show. Great, like just people that were like, "Have you tried doing this on stage?" I think also people were like, "Are you okay?" That was normally the first thing. It was like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And then it was like, "This is really funny."
Ask my co-host that all the time. Like, yo, you okay, bro? You need to talk? You need a hug, man?
Yeah, of course, all the time.
And then I started to do it on stage. I started to do stand-up. I had a writer, a successful television writer that called me and was like, "You will regret. You have such a funny, unique voice. I think you're going to regret if you don't try this." And so I was like, "Fuck it, I'll do it." I also had a bunch of people in LA that were like, "Hey, come out here. You can work as a PA or a assistant." Let me tell you something. I tell people this all the time. Don't bank on those jobs. When I got to LA, it was like all of a sudden it was all those jobs that were promised to me were gone. And I was like, ass. It was, but I ended up I responded to a Craigslist ad the first week I was in town and got a job at the Ice House Comedy Club, which was at the time, I think it still is, but it was Joe Rogan's home club. I saw Marin there all the time, and it was just like Kevin Hart would come in. Joe was very nice, very great comedian. But so I was around these comedians, and when I was done with my shift, essentially just got to sit back and watch them work. And one of my mentors, Brad Williams, very funny guy. I met like my first weekend I worked there. So long story short, I kind of just took a leap. I also drove my resume to the Ice House. It's like 45 minutes from where I lived in LA. And I knew if I just responded on Craigslist, it wasn't enough. I wanted them to see me. I wanted them to be around me. And I just wanted the job so badly. And they said like 200 people applied and they gave it to me. So I was glad that I had gone in person and made a difference. But it's like little things like that I think, it's like 90% where you're at, and then like just 10% a little bit of luck. I think there's like a little element of luck to every, I think, success story out here.
Okay. So you leave Texas, you go to LA on a whim, basically. Now, when do you actually feel like you're in LA for the right reasons and you're doing something that you're meant to be doing?
So I moved here in 2013, October 2013. It wasn't until 2014 that the first year, you're just trying to survive. I was a nanny, so I would work all day as a nanny, get off, then drive 45 minutes to the Ice House to work the door until 1 a.m. So you don't even have time to do it. I didn't have time to perform. I didn't have time to write. I just was trying to survive and pay my bills. And I got a break, luckily, in 2014 where one of those like listicle sites that they were really big, you know, like BuzzFeed and stuff, and college. She was just more than that. But yeah, essentially those hit me up about writing for them. So that became my full-time job, was working in an office with other like funny writers who were way better than they've all gone on to, like, one of them writes for like Cartoon Network, another got his own show. It was like, but we all needed money at the time. So we're all just like this little incubating, like writing 28 bridesmaid fails, or something like that, you know? And I also asked him to like take my name off of all of them.
Right.
The dumb shit I did, it was like, like 13 celebrities named Chad, number 8.
Chadwick Boseman.
Shit like that they made us do. Yeah. And, but to be fair, like, you know, it was great because I was around these poor struggling writers who were way better than this fucking site. But that wasn't until I felt like, okay, I'm actually able to do something in comedy in this world. The first year, everyone says, is the hardest year. Move to LA or you move to New York or whatever, like you're in that creative city space. It is rough. I thought that I was going to die. I was scarily poor. I was like, you know, you when you're poor, you take a lot of risks. Yeah.
Yeah. Jumping turnstiles and, you know, hiding in bathrooms on a train.
Eating food. I'm like, I don't know where this has been, but, you know, like just the ice house.
Cheeseburgers, man.
Cheeseburgers, the ice house was so concerned for me. They would send me home with food, like, from the kitchen. So they became like my family, my comedy family. And the comedy community really does look out for each other out here. They're a little, you know, they can be petty at times and catty, but like if somebody is, you know, sending death threats or going after a comedian, like everybody jumps on board to protect them. And I felt like for me, when I was really struggling, there's so many other people in the trenches with you. So we're all just trying to make it and really looking out for each other. So that was a blessing to be in this particular community.
Okay. Now, when do you get your first big break?
I guess one of my first big breaks was Geek and Sundry hit me up. They were partnering with Funimation, and Funimation owns like 500 anime titles like Dragon Ball Z, Attack on Titan, not One Punch Man, but One Piece. And My Hero Academia. They own so much. And I honestly like created my Twitter account. One of the big reasons was to follow them. And they followed me back. And I think they were like, oh, this chick tweets about DBZ constantly. And I hit them up because I wanted to go to SDCC. I wanted to go to San Diego Comic-Con, and my, you know, I have family in San Diego and I'd been there before. And I asked them if they needed help at Comic-Con, and they said, yeah, which I don't know if you can do this to companies anymore, but, you know, back in the day, it was like they, you know, needed help. They need an extra set of hands. I would hand out t-shirts, whatever they wanted me to do. I just wanted to be a part of it. I just wanted to be close to them.
Right.
And they ended up giving me a mic and a camera guy just to interview cosplayers on the floor. So that was, I don't know if you can hear, there's like a helicopter.
Oh, no. I don't hear it, no.
Okay, perfect. It might get really... But, yeah, so anyway, so I ended up hosting with them. They gave me my first hosting gig, which was essentially me just running around asking people about their Yoda cosplay or whatever. and then Geek and Sundry needed a co-host for this anime series they were doing, and Funimation was like, oh, we know somebody. And so they put my name in, and it was with Xavier Woods from WWE. And we were teaching anime to people. Like, if you love X-Men, you'll love My Hero Academia or whatever. And it was partnered with Funimation. So I think that was a break because it allowed me to use that in other hosting stuff to be like, oh, here, I hosted my own show at Geek and Sundry. So I would say that was a big break, because then what ended up happening was I got my own shows at Nerdist, which is their bigger sister company. And then that kind of just spiraled into a lot of the other stuff that I got.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. So now, because of your love for Dragon Ball Z, you started your own podcast called Krillin' It.
Yeah.
Right.
Krillin' It.
and you started that with Iffy. Now, how did that come about? Well, how did you meet Iffy?
Iffy and I met at a show called Tournament of Nerds, which is a show at UCB that they have every month where you are characters roast battling each other, essentially. Oh. And I was Carmen Sandiego battling Harley Quinn. And I forgot what Iffy was. Iffy's different. We're like have very different styles. I have to write out all my jokes.
Right.
Iffy is more of a character actor where he just plays the character. Uh-huh. And me, I try to play like the roast. We were talking about this yesterday because he had a Tournament of Nerds yesterday. But yeah, so essentially, you never know what you're going to bet. It's like the Care Bears versus Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone or whatever. It's like that. It's like the most randomest shit, and it's so funny. If anyone is ever in LA when they're doing one, it's hilarious. And then they have like celebrity judges like Colin Hanks or something, or WWE people. And so we met there because I was competing and he was competing. And then we realized we were like the only ones. It's changed since then, but this was about like 5 years ago. We realized we were the only ones on Facebook constantly posting anime jokes. And so I wanted to start a DBZ podcast. And if he hit me up like, hey, do you want to do a DBZ podcast? And I was like, yeah, we should call it Krillin' It, like as a joke. And then he was like, okay. And then he like made our Krillin' It. So, and then everyone thought that we were big Krillin fans. That was the most hilarious part.
Right.
Is everyone would come on like, well, y'all's favorite is Krillin, right?
Who the fuck is a fan of Krillin?
Krillin's the shit, man.
There's a lot of Krillin heads. I think people relate to him.
Yeah.
Because he's normal. Like, I think people relate to like, oh yeah, I would be the loser out of like Goku, Vegeta, Gohan. Like, I would be the one that dies first.
Oh, you mean Yamcha?
Yamcha, right? Yeah.
Yamcha too, Yamcha. But I think people relate to Krillin because like they feel a deep soul connection to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you also have another podcast. Well, that one didn't make it. Now you have another podcast called Nerdificent.
Yeah.
Which is like a nerdy deep dive, subject by subject, about past, present, and future fandoms, I want to say.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So how did you guys come up with that concept where it was like, I want to talk about just everything nerdy and geeky?
Yeah, so we knew Jack O'Brien, who's one of the heads of the comedy division at How Stuff Works, which got bought by iHeartRadio. He was at Cracked, and Iffy and I had both done stuff at Cracked, and he hit us up and was like, hey, I'm now developing stuff for How Stuff Works, and do you guys want to do a podcast? So we were still doing Krillin' It, but they were like, hey, we want you to come do a podcast for us. Can it not just be about anime? We're like, can you do something that like is broader for a broader audience? And we're like, sure. So that's what happened. We did a pilot episode about Comic-Con, just teaching people about the history of Comic-Con and where it's going. And they loved it. And so then they signed us on. And then How Stuff Works got bought by iHeart. So now we're at iHeartRadio. But yeah, it's the hardest part about that show is that everyone wants to be on it, but not everyone. I think people think that it's just a casual podcast. Like, oh yeah,
I've watched Charmed before. I've watched. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I was like, I've watched Dexter's Laboratory. I'm like, okay, but can you teach thousands of listeners about? Because that's what I think they don't quite understand. And people just want to like come on and plug their stuff, and they don't realize that it's actually like, you have to know your shit. And it's a lot of times stuff like Iffy and I have way past we've like gone past what we know. That was like the first year of doing that podcast, picking the subject we know. So now we're in territory of picking things that we don't watch, but we want our followers to still be able to hear from an educated, passionate person about them. And so sometimes people will come on and I don't think they really take it. One of our friends, Malcolm Barrett, hilarious. He's on The Boys show that's on Amazon. He's on Preacher, Timeless, like everything. He hit us up about being on it. And then he laughed because I think on the show he was like, yeah, and they told me this is a real podcast.
What the fuck does that
and
mean?
So I was like, well, I mean, essentially I was like, like, you can't just come on here and be like, yeah, I've seen Street Sharks a little bit, because he wanted to do Street Sharks. So he like,
That's funny.
so funny. He actually, I love him. He's like one of the busiest people I know. He went back and like watched the whole first series so that when he came on, he could like name all the characters, talk about their history and yeah.
Right.
So I love that about him. But yeah, sometimes we'll get people like, oh yeah, I've seen One Punch Man or whatever, and want to come on and, you know, just give the basics for it. But we,
what do you really know
following,
about
Yeah.
Yeah, I think our following is they're more serious nerds, I guess. And so they'll definitely correct us if we get something wrong.
Oh, 100%.
Facts.
Now, I was listening to an episode of Nerdificent, and I think you said, I'm paraphrasing, that you said that you know, like, maybe 5 fandoms, you know, entirely too much about, right?
Yeah.
So, what are they, if I'm asking? So, I know one is Dragon Ball, maybe.
Yeah, Dragon Ball, Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone,
sitting right by my Twilight Zone wall of artwork. Wonder Woman is another one. Let me see. Probably Disney. I don't know if people count that, but like even before I was in Disney, like any of those movie trivia, whatever things, like I can easily do Disney trivia in a way that a grown woman shouldn't be able to.
Like, what's the name of Ariel's sisters? Like, you know all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they were pulling stuff from like Atlantis out of there. I'm like, what? People forget, like, you know, Great Mouse Detective, stuff like that. People forget about those. Iconic. And then also I would group in there Nicktoons animation or animation in general. You know, I think a lot of times it doesn't get the respect it deserves as like some of the other shows, like say Doctor Who or whatever. But some of those quote unquote kids shows are iconic and made by really groundbreaking people that went on to be filmmakers. And those are my main ones, I would say. I definitely I talk about the MCU and I write about the MCU a lot. But I don't know if I follow, like, I don't read the comics as much. I used to be super into Spider-Gwen, but I've kind of like, haven't watched much. And horror. I'm a big horror nerd. So, yeah.
Now, you're Mexican and Iffy is African, right?
Yeah.
Now, is there added pressure in this industry because you are a person of color? Like, you feel like you don't want to let us down in a sense?
I think that we're in a weird position where it feels like anything we make has to have some type of social commentary to it. And we want to, but sometimes we just, I don't want to say it's that we want to forget about that, but it's like, we're not the ones that need to hear it. Right. A lot of the, you know, like our audience and the people who would watch because Iffy and I are both TV writers. And so we're both making shows right now. And it's like, the people that watch our stuff, they're already aware of it. They're already living that life. They're already, you know, having to deal with ICE, afraid of the cops, being targeted by their skin color. And so it's difficult at times that sometimes we're pushed to write those stories when we want to write fantasy stories. We want to write wizard stories. We want to, you know, we don't always want that to be at the forefront of all of our conversations. It's like being invited on a diversity panel. I'm happy to do them. But the people in the room that choose to be at diversity panels, they're not the ones that need to hear that message.
Right.
You know? So it's kind of an interesting and difficult place that we're in, where it feels like we have to be the ones always having, and I'll get tagged in shit. Like, Dani, did you see this? And then I told people, please stop doing that. It'll be like, you know, this kid was murdered, and I'm like, you know, this brown kid or whatever. And I'm like, this is so traumatizing. It's like, they do this to queer people as well. It's like, you know, this trans woman was murdered and they'll tag the trans people. And it's like, this is so jarring. Like, can you believe this? Yeah, we fucking can. We can believe it.
See it all the time.
And they're the ones that need to be doing the work. And I hate that it's so much pressure put on people of color to speak up constantly. It's like sometimes we just want to tag team out of it. Sometimes you just want to tap out mentally and emotionally from the conversation.
Right. Now, we talk about a lot as a person of color and also being a geek, how it was growing up like that. Now, how was it growing up for you being a person of color and being into all this nerdy and geeky stuff? Like, were you picked on? Were you made fun of? Like, what happened as you were growing?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it was weird. It wasn't acceptable to like anime where I was, like, at all at my age. I mean, by the time I got super into it in middle school and high school. And like, then people were watching like The Hills.
Right.
Or Jersey Shore, you know, or whatever. And it was like, this chick is like, you know, watching Dragon Ball Kai or whatever. And so that was kind of, I felt like I had to hide to elements of myself. I still to this day get people that challenge. I think that I'm into it. I think that also as a woman, my knowledge is constantly challenged about it. And so you're just treated as an other, like it's not your community, you know, like you're adjacent, you're on the outside, you're always treated as an outsider in your own community. And that was really frustrating for me when I started to come up, when I started to get all these hosting gigs, the comment section was horrendous. It was like, she's just on here because she's a woman, she's just on here because she's pretty, blah, blah. Oh, this chick again, this chick doesn't know anything. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm literally in your community. I was teased. Like, I spent hours in role-playing chat rooms with y'all, and now
That's the dragon, bitch.
You guys, just because now I'm not like a geeky little kid in glasses and I have tits and an ass, and all of a sudden I'm not.
Just because I hit fucking puberty doesn't mean I don't like Dragon Ball.
Right.
Yeah. I literally have it tattooed on my body, like, and all of a sudden I'm not worthy anymore. But I can guarantee if I didn't look the way that I looked, I would still be. Sure, if I were a nerdy white guy, I would be considered a huge part of the, like, you know, I would just sit down and they're like, he knows about anime.
He knows everything.
You know, and it's just the way that I look. So that was so difficult to have my own community. Then I really did start to question, like, maybe I don't really know about it. Maybe I don't really belong here because this is the thing I know the most about. If I can't even prove to this community, then I'm fucked.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely dealt with that.
Now, being a woman in the industry and then the thirst traps that you kind of post sometimes, right? So now, don't you think that kind of blurs the lines where it's like, oh, you know, she's on this show because she's pretty. She might be looked at as a sex object, but it's like, yo, I really know my shit. Like, how do you, like, I guess, traverse through that bullshit and just be like, no, I got to prove myself?
Yeah, I mean, but I think that my work speaks for itself. You know, like I wrote in this best-selling book called The Good Immigrant. Like I have worked for Disney. I've hosted at the Oscars. You know, like I can't. It's not my job to change the minds of those people. Like you can exist as a. I also want to preface the thing about growing up as a person of color is that you're often taught to hate your body. Your body is not the default. It's not what's considered beautiful. And I dealt with that heavily, so much so that I developed an eating disorder because I had people that commented on my body so much. Right. Being called like thunder thighs. I had kids in middle school that called me Shrek because of my body. And I look back and I'm just thick, like I'm just athletic, you know, and I have thick thighs, but like it was so difficult being picked on. And so I ended up developing an eating disorder, did a lot of therapy to get out of that. And now I think that's why I try to post my body so much because I really hated it for so many years. I would just cry about it. And now I'm like, I'm never going to be this young ever again. I want to enjoy it. And so, but yeah, I think my work speaks for itself. I think you can do both and it's really frustrating. But I can't like care about those people, I guess, who comment on it. There's so many fine ass women who are like successful. I mean, I look at Issa Rae and it's just like, she can I know, but she's a genius. She's a genius, and she's sexy as hell, and she's funny, and she's a terrific writer, and she's sexy as hell. And it's like, you can be all of those things. And I would hate for her to hide her beauty because she thought that she needs to, you know, tone it down in some way to make people more comfortable. I think that she's showing that you can be all those things. Lizzo fucking clapping her cheeks all the time. She's like, you know, out there with her flute, showing off her. I mean, sometimes she's not even wearing underwear.
Just body positive all across the board.
Yeah. Most of the time she's not wearing underwear. She is talented as shit. Extremely creative and hustles harder than anyone that I know, right. You know, so it's like you can be, and she's very sex positive. So it's like you can be all those things. And it's not my job to train people. You know, that's the thing is people are like, well, what did you expect? Because I have people that write me. I had a guy that I shared his message. He wrote me like, can I come on you? Like, I want to show you my dick.
Right.
And people are like, what did you expect? I'm like, you know, you can say
it's that type of shit where it's like, he's done it because I don't know if it's worked at all, but like,
nope, hasn't.
But then I'm saying, why try it? And then second, why try it on you?
Yeah,
exactly. And people are like, well, you posted this photo of you. One, I want to say, like, Amelia Clark was naked for the first 3 seasons of Game of Thrones. It doesn't mean that you're going to... No, but legit, are you going to write her? Can I, you know, that means she wants to see my dick specifically. Right. It's like, no, she fucking doesn't. She was doing her job. I mean, granted, I don't know if she had to be naked in those scenes, but whatever. She was doing her job to get to where she was. And, yeah, so for me, though, it's like, there's a line. I can look at photos, let's say of Tessa Thompson, and be like, you're sexy. That doesn't mean I need to cross the line and say, I want to come on you. There is a difference me saying, like, you're sexy, you're hot. You know, I'm happy that she's posting photos where she feels good about herself. There's a difference between that and thinking that I personally am entitled to her body. And I think that's the difference.
My boy Hesh was saying something. He was like, I want to do a series where women get these outrageous comments and respond to them positively. Like, yeah, sure. Just to see what happens.
Yeah.
Just to see like what happens with the guy, like if he responds in a certain way, or just like just what happens. Just record it for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, you know, I can honestly tell you that any man that has to desperately write women about coming on them is shit. They're not shit. Think about it. Because if you were, all the guys that I know that are good in bed, they don't fucking need to write anybody.
Yo, that's a wild opening line. Like, it is. I mean, come on.
They don't need, I mean, they're good. Their work speaks for itself.
Their work speaks for itself. Laying this dick down.
You know. But yeah, if they're good if they're good in the bed, then they're just, they're confident enough in themselves that they don't need to write women like that. And even men that aren't confident in themselves don't need to write women like that. That's not how you gain confidence.
Right.
So for me, I've dated the nerdiest fucking dudes because they were funny. They were creative. I was super attracted to their art, or I was super attracted to their comedy. They were nerdy and, some of them scrawny or whatever, but I just liked that they made me laugh. And I think that's hard for men to grasp, for certain men to grasp that. No, we do actually like nice guys. We do actually like funny guys. But some of them aren't funny, or some of them aren't nice. Some of them aren't nice.
Right.
So.
Now, how is it? Now, you said that you're in therapy. Now, how is it trying to keep your mental stability in an industry like this, where it's like male dominated? You got these men saying these certain comments. Just how is it day to day? Just trying to keep yourself together.
Yeah, it's rough, man. Like, I've had to take breaks. I took like a whole month off when I did this thing on Machinima, which doesn't even exist anymore, where I was like teaching them about DC. Kid you not, the comments were so bad. I was like, I need to take I told Iffy, like, I couldn't do our podcast for a month, which, everyone's like, don't read the comments, which I don't do anymore. This is when I was a little bit newer. But also, fucking Iffy would send them to me. He would
see this shit?
Look at this shit.
Oh, don't send this to me. And it gets in your head. So I took a month off one year. I like mentally couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I would like cry in my bed. Like it was just a mess. And then, you get a tougher skin. You're like, I don't care about you. I care about my employers. I care about the people that are hiring me. They're the ones paying me. They think I did a good job. But in therapy, it got to the point this last year, I was in therapy like twice a week. Like I don't think people understand the level of like pressure and how difficult it is. You can actually be perfect. This will fuck with your head. You can have a perfect audition. You can literally have the casting director be like, that was perfect, or tell your agents you were perfect, and they still go with someone else.
Right.
It's just, maybe that person was perfect, but they just they looked how they wanted them to look. Or, I've had pitches where my producers were like, you were perfect. Do not change a single thing. And they're like, if they don't want it, that's cool. We'll go to a different studio. But it fucks with your head. That part, you're so out of control of, it feels like you're so out of control of your destiny that it's just like my entire identity, like my fate is in the hands of other people. And I had to go to therapy because that part fucked with my head. I had a really abusive dad, and that it's interesting. If you have a bad parent, the sheer number of years it takes to overcome that.
Right.
It's wild. I thought it would just be like a year, and it's been years. I mean, it just is. The trauma didn't happen overnight, so you can't undo it overnight. So it's taken me a long time, but I don't think I would be where I'm at without therapy. I'd probably be a mess. And I feel like I'm a really grounded person who's been able to gain a lot of success and talk about these issues while also being funny or also being creative.
Now, how do you cope with it all? Because I know you've been open about your depression and also the attempted suicide. Now, how do you make light of something so dark, though?
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it has to be funny or it's just sad.
Right.
Like it's just like this sad thing that happened to me. And so it takes some of the power back. People don't always like when I joke about suicide or depression. And I'm joking about my own experiences with it. For me, it was like I sucked at everything. I lost my identity. I was like spiraling, failure. My marriage was ending, all of this shit. I tried to kill myself, and then I couldn't even fucking do that right. That's really fucking funny. Like, someone up there thinks this is hilarious. That you wake up and you're like, are you kidding me?
Can't do shit right.
And so... yeah, so that to me is funny. I mean, but some people cannot joke about it, and people write me and they get really upset. They get really upset when I joke about my eating disorder. They get really upset when I joke about my attempted suicide, and I can't take that away from them. The only thing that I ask is that they don't try to veto my feelings. Our feelings can be equal. So how they feel, they've lost a brother to suicide, or they, almost died from like whatever, their feelings can be equal to mine, but they can't be stronger than mine.
Right.
Because I'm like, no. I have my punch card. Like I have my mental illness card. I'm a card carrying member of this community. I've done my time, meaning I can joke about it, about my own trauma the way I see fit. But, and you can say you don't agree, but you don't get to tell me how I'm allowed to cope with my own trauma. You don't get to veto how I feel.
Right.
And we try to do that a lot in the community, and I'm really tired of it. I try to be respectful. If I see people, I think it's funny. I think anytime someone can joke about their trauma, it takes so much work to live with your trauma.
Yeah.
Let alone joke about it. But, there was Beth Stelling, a great comedian, very funny. She was joking about she had a very open case where she came forward about her boyfriend, who was a writer, who hit her. And it was very brave of her. It was very difficult of her to out this guy who openly beat her. And she had a joke in her set, I think, about bruising like a peach, or way funnier than what I'm seeing now.
Right.
That is, to me, is like, she's moved on. I'm sure done therapy. She's done a lot of work. She's moved on, but she jokes about it because that's one of the ways that we cope with what happened to us, or else it's just something that happened to us. And that's too sad for me to think of. You know, it has to be some kind, like my rough childhood with my dad. It hurts to be in the victim mode. I have to take some of the power back from it. And comedy is a way for me to do that.
Okay. Now, have those thoughts subsided, or do they ever subside?
Yeah. I definitely think, you know, they're cyclical. And that's something I kind of feel like same thing that an addict deals with is knowing that those cravings will come back, those thoughts might come back, but now you have the coping skills, hopefully, to help you get through them. So as before, when I would spiral, it was like, I would talk in absolutes. I would say like, it will never get better. Now I know that's not true. I don't know the future. I can't, everyone's doing better than me. Is that true? No. You know, I'll never find love. Is that true? No. Like, you know, I don't know the future. So I try to talk myself out of absolutes is one of my coping skills. I have a ton of them. I feel like my body is just a bunch of little like elves that whenever I'm smiling, they're like, oh, this bitch is depressed again. We better get to work. And I'm like, literally, that's literally what I feel my body is. They're like, oh, fuck. And so they're like just sending out their best men or whatever, you know, to like, and then like one of their first line of defense gets like knocked down and the next line of defense pops up. And so it's like all these coping skills that I've spent years trying to, you know, master, they all come into play because I do spiral. Definitely. I don't know anyone in comedy. I don't know anyone in life, but I don't know anyone in entertainment that doesn't spiral. It's such a, you know, when I look at our work, like, so One Day at a Time, my friend Gloria Calderon-Kellett, who's a showrunner for One Day at a Time, they were 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, had like 100,000 viewers and still got canceled. Damn. So that's what I mean is you can be like perfect and still have your livelihood taken from you. It's such a mind fuck. Luckily, they hopped on a different network, but that's just how brutal this industry is. And if you're not grounded, if you don't have coping skills, it can totally take you under. Cause it's like, what else can I do? How could I have been more perfect? You know? So yeah, so I think it's a necessary thing for a lot of people. Is
your dog one way that you cope with the industry? Is like, I can come home is just like, you know, fuck everything. I got Molly.
Yeah. Molly, she's hilarious. One, she's just really, she's like that bitch. Like she just like stares down people. She has the best side eye. I remember because I've had her for 12 years now. And I would come home drunk in college and she would just be like, seriously, bitch?
Like really again with the shit?
Really? Yeah. I was dating, I'll put loosely in quotes. I was seeing this writer, brought him home, and she straight up peed on the carpet. She was just like, and she never does that. She never, like, I know she's potty trained. 12 years, she's fucking potty trained. She doesn't have accidents. She was just like, no.
Like, no.
That I love.
Not this one. Not this guy.
No. Sorry. And or she'll snore. She is my biggest heckler. Like I will be having sex and she'll just straight up be under the bed snoring, just heckling. Like, wow, this is the best y'all can do. Like oh my god.
Hey, what's my name?
Exactly. And God, yeah. So I love Molly. She's so funny. She's just hilarious. She's one of the funniest people I know. She just doesn't give a shit. But she's by me. She's definitely like, oh God. Like I think when I'm crying, she's like, okay. Again.
There. Right? Want to go for a walk?
Yeah, exactly. She'll sit by me. Sometimes she'll let me like hold her paw. Sometimes I'll hold her paw when I'm crying. It's just really sweet. I've definitely been like crying in my bathtub and she'll come and sit on the mat next to me.
Okay.
She's great to have. She's great to just hold. And I think that it does something to our serotonin levels or dopamine when you're like I heard when you hold an animal or probably a baby or something. When you're holding another life force, it like helps you.
That's dope.
The chemicals in your brain.
That's dope. So, Dani, what's next for you? What you got going on?
I am developing a couple of shows right now that hopefully I get to announce soon. Not to jinx anything. I'm like half about like don't jinx it, and another like no, manifest it.
Yeah.
So hopefully people will get to hear about that. I'm going to be at New York Comic Con, which is really cool. I think one of my panels is still not announced yet, but it's a really big panel, so I hope I get to announce that soon. And just constantly working, just constantly trying to create new shows, to be honest. I have so many stories that I want to tell, and I just want to get more of us work. That's my biggest dream, is like if one of my shows takes off, then I can hire a group of, diverse writers and have actors and like actually make the thing that I want to make.
Right.
And I think honestly, it's a really weird spot where, they are banking on more people of color, but they kind of want other places to take the risk first. You kind of need a couple of credits or like if we're talking about Issa, she had a built-in following.
Right.
So it's rough. Like, white guys don't have to have a built-in following to get their own show.
Right.
Or to be handed a franchise. My friends and I were talking about this. Sometimes they can just direct a small indie film and then they get handed a huge franchise. It's happened to several directors. And it's just like, we have to prove ourselves time and time again.
Didn't I have a Blade 2? A Blade 3 or something like that? One of the directors, they just did some indie shit and just,
I think so.
The Blade franchise. Fucked it up.
I carry this conversation off because I can't name some of the people I know, but then
I see these niggas.
And I still would love for them to cast me in their film, so I can't name them, but it has happened to many directors that it's just like they direct this tiny thing. But for us, all I want people to understand is like we are not offered those opportunities. We might direct the tiny thing, but we don't get even the coverage. If you think of like that was what Brie Larson, who with Captain Marvel was like, hey, I noticed that all of the journalists that you guys send me are white guys.
Right.
That was all she was saying is like, hey, I would love it if some of the journalists. So it's like we don't even get the coverage. We don't even get we don't even get in the room to talk to those people. Yeah, or it's us covering. It'll be like a black publication that's covering black filmmakers, and that's great, but it's like, why aren't the white publications, the ones that are run by them, also covering the black filmmakers?
Go cover Luke Cage.
Yeah. But like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's still separated too much, and we still have so much work. We're doing the work. People of color are doing the work. It's the people that consider themselves allies. They're allies until it's uncomfortable. Like, they're allies as long as it's still comfortable to them, as long as it doesn't threaten their job in any way, as long as, like they're allies to a point. And they like, I'll have people write me privately, like, I support you. Oh my gosh, when I saw you taking down that guy, whatever, I support you. And I'm like, why don't you do that publicly?
Yeah.
But I have to put my job on the line to call this shit out, but you guys are unwilling to. That to me is a real ally, is someone that understands their privilege. They're not going to get fired for saying it. It's a lot of work. They got a lot of work to do. We just need to keep working. We need to keep working on telling our stories.
That's right.
It's hard for us to tell our stories and be fighting this fight. And having to take on the full brunt of it. So hopefully that will change in the next like 5 years, but I still feel like it's a lot of what we call like wallpaper. Like, it's a lot of, here's a brown face, but behind the scenes, it's not brown voices. They're not allowed.
Fucking bastards.
And you feel that. You can tell that it's not genuine. And then they're like, well, it didn't sell with this brown face you told us to. And it's like, yeah, but also you had him call the cops in this scene. That's not what he's not going to call. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make sense. He didn't even use seasoning when he was cooking. Like, what is it? Like, you're not who are you making this for?
Ain't a bottle of Laurie's in that fucking scene. What's going on here?
It's like, who are you making this story? You're just trying to check off the box, and you're not actually allowing us to take the. That's another thing is white filmmakers and storytellers are able to take. They're given the opportunity to take more risks. We have to be a sure bet.
Right.
Where it's really difficult for them to take a risk, and I'm dealing with that right now. Is like, well, your script is really funny. Your script is perfect,
but
what else do you have, or how else can you? And it's like, that's so frustrating because you just said it was perfect. Why is that not good enough? I showed you I can write, or I showed you, I'm a storyteller. Here are the other things that I've done. Here are the other works I've done, but like they want even more than that. And it's just, so it's a uphill battle, but we're making it.
Yeah, at some point they're gonna have no choice but to accept us and let us in. So I feel like that day is coming sooner than later, but it's coming.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So where can everyone find you on the internet to post rude comments and such?
I should be like, I'm at Iffy Waddy. I am at Ms. Dani Fernandez, MSDANIFERNANDEZ, on Twitter and Instagram. Nerdificent drops every Tuesday wherever you get your podcast. That's our fandom podcast. We have some cool episodes coming up tackling different and then we're going to go into Spooktober again, with October doing more horror, tackling more like spooky franchises. I think last year we did Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the Halloween franchise, which is actually really fascinating.
Okay.
So those are some of my things. And I'll be at New York Comic Con. So if you follow me, I will be announcing my panels hopefully in the next 2 weeks.
Yo, are we going to Comic Con?
The New York one?
Yes. Are we going to New York Comic Con or what? Tired of y'all bullshit.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, not really.
Oh, fuck y'all.
I'm broke. What you want me to do, dog?
Save the fucking money. Let's go.
I like cheeseburgers too much.
Fat bitch. Dani, I want to thank you for coming to the dojo and chopping it up with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
No problem. Anything y'all want to say, fellas?
We good.
We good? All right, Dani, thank you.
All right, thanks.
You have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye.